Karson, Karol, with a K.
With a K.
Both of them.
All of them.
What a silly name.
K squared.
Hey, I'm so happy that you're here.
Yeah.
We've talked about doing podcasts for almost a year now. And I'm so glad that I finally decided to start one so that you could come on and that we could do this.
If you remember, we actually did a pilot episode.
We did one episode that we listened back to and we're like, we should think about more what we want to do before we start.
Yeah, it was a good test.
It was good, and it was great conversation. Welcome to this thing that I've started that inevitably has to be called a podcast. Although
that's not a podcast.
But it's not a podcast. I don't know why I'm weird about that, but I see so many memes making fun of people starting podcasts, and I laugh at them, which means I probably agree with the concept.
Kernel and truth.
Which makes me a hypocrite starting one. But it really is not about like the attention for me. I'm not trying to like build this audience and monetize a podcast. It's just a really convenient platform to meet a lot of needs for a lot of people. So here we are.
Yeah. And I remember like when we were talking about a podcast a year ago, it was like, hey, we want to chat with people and have it be a genuine conversation, and also not that they're just giving all the value and whatever, but like they feel like they're getting value from it too.
Right. So I want to make sure that you walk away from this conversation feeling just super validated and super heard. And that's going to be my goal. And hopefully you don't hate it. And if you say something that you want to share with your Instagram followers, that you can do that. So it'll be available to you and all those things. But I do want to start off with this question.
Okay.
Really important question. From your experience, what percentage of men leaving the gym bathroom wash their hands?
Oh, man. From personal experience, I think, all right.
I just need a real honest answer. I had a submission from a fellow gym girl, and I said, what's one thing that you could ask gym bros and get like the honest to God answer? And her first question was, do y'all really even wash your hands in the bathroom?
I would say no. Percentage-wise?
Did you just say no?
I would say no. Percentage-wise, I think it depends on whether there's another person in the bathroom. If there's another person in the bathroom, I am much more likely to wash my hands.
I'm not asking about you, but I'm glad that you're...
I think that's a general consistency.
I would say you're probably right. That's social also pressure. My experience. So does that mean what you're telling me then is that when I go and pick up a weight, a dumbbell, get on a machine, there's a good chance that I'm canoodling with another man and his parts?
I would not put it that way, but absolutely yes. I think that I worked in a gym. I worked in a gym for several months. I cleaned things and the weights and all that stuff. And I also saw how often the members cleaned the weights as well. And to be honest with you, it's not very often. So
that's so upsetting.
Yes.
So, I actually thought about this where there was just one of those moments. I haven't had a lot of these, but I was just like, maybe COVID was a good just kind of reset. Because I always looked at people who cleaned, like who sprayed down machines before they used them as like extra. And then I watched how many men went from the urinal and the stall to the door.
Right.
And just past the sink.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I should spray everything down. Because it's one thing if you watch someone at a restaurant not wash their hands. You're not going back to the same table as them. Gross, but not going to affect me. But when they're walking back into the gym, touching everything after having just touched themselves, that is really upsetting. Yes. And so PSA, just spray down your machines as a general rule, I guess was what I'm hearing. But also wash your freaking hands.
Please.
Because you're about to go touch a lot of things other people are going to touch. Well, I'm going to say that my friend who submitted that question to me is going to be sad. Probably not surprised because men are gross. Disgusting. What a word. Well, that was one of the questions I had for you.
I will say, from working in a gym and cleaning both sexes' bathrooms, the girls are not very much better than the guys.
Oh, that's some tea.
Yes, it is.
What do you mean not much better?
Guys and girls are different.
Obviously.
Guys, I think, land in the gross category. Girls are in the messy category. So what I mean, like, is when guys, in the bathroom and use the bathroom, they just don't really care what happens in there. Girls just kind of leave everything out and around.
Oh, I
and
see.
It's just like hair.
It's like personal belongings
Yes.
strewn across.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. And
I
so
think
it's-
one of those is objectively less bad. And I think women are objectively less bad than men
Less
when it comes
gross,
to. That's
for
right.
sure.
But even I would rather your belongings be strewn across the floor than your fluids. You know what I mean? Like that just feels like a much better version. I didn't expect this podcast to start this way because we always get real deep real quick. But I think that's a good point to say, and I think people appreciate that. Here's my other question. This was also submitted to me by a friend, a close friend. I want to make sure that I read it right because she's got a certain way of talking that just really defines her. So here's the question. Why do you gotta have to be weird in the gym towards women? Why do you gotta stare?
Why do I gotta be weird towards women?
Now, this wasn't directed at you personally.
Right.
But I think what she's saying is, why do men think it's okay to stare at women in the gym? And I'm guessing the staring is not into their eyes longingly as a potential future good relationship, but in a gross objectifying, checking you out, making you feel uncomfortable stare.
Yes. I think a couple reasons. One, in the gym, and is biological, you're lifting weights, you're exerting a lot of energy, testosterone is up, you're feeling good about yourself. And it's, as a biological male, it's more likely that you're, biologically looking to mate, right? And looking.
So you think there's just there's a natural
primal urge.
There's a natural thing of like in the gym, people are checking each other out.
Sure. I believe that that's true.
Okay.
I mean, like even myself I'm also very like aware. I like, and there's not much to do in between sets, right? Besides get on your phone, like there's not a lot to do. So it's like, okay, who's around? What do they look like? Are they cooler than I am? Are they beautiful? Can I approach that person? And then kind of the other aspect of that is, let's be honest, ladies, like the things you wear in the gym are
he's making eye contact.
different than the things you normally wear in public. Maybe not all of you, but generally speaking, from my experience, that's what I've seen. I'm not blaming
No, it's more,
women
a
for
lot
that.
of it's probably convenience. Like it's more
for sure.
comfortable, you move better.
Exactly.
And you're not like you're sweating and so you don't want to be like bundled up.
Exactly.
Right.
And so and for guys very visually stimulated as males, and so all of those things come together to have a comment like this. Why do you gotta stare?
Why do you gotta be weird and stare? Well, I think the weirdness is probably the bigger because obviously you look at the people around you.
Right.
There's a way in which you can do that that doesn't cross boundaries, and there's also a duration that matters.
Sure.
Right? Like I agree with you in some sense. It's kind of it's the double take that gets you. It's the double take that's the problem.
Right.
I think there is an inherent like, oh, I just look because something caught my eye. It is what you do after that that you are ultimately responsible for. If you dwell, if you leer, if you make it a point to direct your attention in an inappropriate way, that's a problem.
Right.
But yeah, it's hard.
It is. It is hard because most of the time, like in the gym, again, in between sets, your mind can be anywhere and on anything. And sometimes it's just like, oh, this person over here, let's look at what they're doing. Sometimes that's can be construed as weird and stuff like that. And so it is difficult. And I think, and don't think that girls are
not checking
out guys as well.
I think they're checking you out, Karson.
Maybe not me personally, but
I think they are.
I don't think so. Maybe so.
Stay
maybe
humble.
Maybe a little bit. But there is definitely a mutual attraction in the gym, like, because it is a place that you go, and there's a certain thing that happens that when I see someone in the gym consistently, that's attractive to me.
Yeah, there's a character trait that enough discipline communicates that is desirable.
Exactly. Because, and many parallels have been made between discipline in the gym and discipline in other aspects of life.
Right.
And so if I see you in the gym day in and day out, like you're there at the same time, like especially if you're an early morning person like I am, it's like 6 a.m., you're in there, like all that stuff. It's like, that's interesting. Like I'm taking notice of that.
Right.
Right. Rather than, and also notice, maybe this is personal, but maybe I notice a little bit more like, how hard are you working? Or are you just there for the pictures, the being able to take pictures for Instagram or whatever?
Right.
Are you working out? Are you doing both? That's great. Right. And, but there's also like a level of attractiveness on like, wow, this girl's in here every single day. She's getting it. And she's working hard at it. And it's a little bit more than like, they're not just there to be seen, because I see a lot of that too. And from guys and girls. Right. From guys and girls, especially like I work out at a very popular gym where tons of influencers, lots of big profiles, very, very popular for gym, for gym culture. Alpha Land. Yes.
Just say it.
Alpha Land. I work out at Alpha Land. And so it goes from both ways. And even like that's temptation for me if like, okay, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, like I'm going to go see what's up at Alpha Land, see who's there, see what's going on, and just to be seen and build. And I think that's part of Alpha Land's culture of like the networking aspect of it.
The branding
and stuff like that. And so,
yeah, I agree. I think you can see someone in the gym and have a healthy attraction to them.
Right.
And there's an appropriate way to communicate that.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be kind of uncomfortably leering and obviously lusting after them in such a public way.
For sure.
Because one, that's not appropriate, period. Like you should not be prioritizing that above other things in general, especially of strangers. Because no one should feel like their primary benefit to the world is their like objective beauty. Like that can be a plus and people should feel beautiful and people are beautiful. But like if they feel like that's the only value they bring, like that's not good. So you can be attracted to someone at the gym. You can have, you see gym crush content all over the place. The memes constantly of gym crush. So like it happens. And people are obviously there to try to look good in some sense. There's a health component, absolutely. But a lot of people are wanting to build a, hot girl summer body. That's real. And so, yeah, I
think you're totally right. Like there is a way to approach that in a non-weird, threatening way. I don't know.
I don't know how. Let me say, I know how I could go up and talk to someone and be respectful and be kind. I just don't know how you could go up to someone in the gym and start a conversation where the underlying and like motive is not, I think you're attractive and so I want your time. Like there's just no way that that's not a part of it. It's not like, hey, you look like you're just a really compassionate person and like you're a servant-hearted, like kind, generous individual. Like you don't get that from them. You only get kind of what they look like and a little bit of their discipline. So like when you go approach someone in the gym, I think the assumption is you think I'm building a sweet bod and or I'm attractive and you want to talk to me. And I don't feel like how else would you, is there another way to approach someone where you don't say that? Is it not essentially swiping right on them in front of their face?
No, I totally think you're right. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. In terms of
elaborate,
we can have a mutual understanding that we're attracted to each other. Right.
Well, you'll never know if a girl's attracted to you. Right. It'll take you about 4 months to figure that out.
Yes, very true. But
So that's a generalization, and I would like to
retract that.
I won't retract it because I do feel like women are not as communicative about their physical attraction to men as men are to women, obviously.
Right.
But I do want to generalize that women are honest and upfront and do tell men when they think they're attractive in the right time. And generally it's not when they first meet. Anyway, continue.
For sure. No, and I think that, I mean, for men, again, generalization, I think the first thing you notice about a girl is their attractiveness. Like, do I think this person is attractive? There has to be some level of physical, I think you're cute or hot or whatever, adjective you want to use to spark an intention to go and talk to them, And so I think that's just heightened, obviously, at a gym level, like in the gym space.
Yeah, same way I like at the beach.
Right. Or, but like, again, like, okay, if we went to a bar and we were at the bar, like, and someone, you went up to a girl and started a conversation with her, would her assumption be that you thought she was attractive?
Right.
I'd hope so.
Right.
Right. I'd hope she would just be like, oh, this guy thinks I'm cute. That's why he's coming to talk to me. I think that's the general assumption. But I do agree with you. I think there's a weird connotation in the gym that somehow it's creepier.
I think it's more sexual.
More sexualized.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I think so. And I because that's probably what is happening. Like,
maybe
I would assume that, my cynical perspective is probably that I think if men are approaching women in the gym, they are not just saying, hey, from the neck up, you look really beautiful. Sure. So I think that's why it's also a challenge. And then I also think the gym is rarely where people in general want to be approached and start new conversations with and new relationships. A lot of people I hear are like, I go into the gym, I put my music in, I put my headphones on, and I just want to focus on what I need to do. Right. And when someone comes over to talk to me, it's like, oh, I'm
an interruption
now being interrupted and I don't know how to end this conversation. And it's like, if I reject them to their face and they were working on the machine 2 rows over, that puts me in a really uncomfortable position too. And so I know a lot of girls who have said, I just wish men wouldn't approach me at the gym because it's an impossible situation to avoid, especially if it's a smaller gym that they come to regularly.
Yeah, and you're gonna, like you just made the point, like you're gonna see them regularly. It's like, okay, now do I gotta switch gyms because this guy's gonna be there every single day? Like, yeah, like I get that. That's uncomfortable, And I think maybe the safety net, like kind of comparing it to the bar scene or whatever, the safety there is, oh, I just don't go to that bar.
Right.
But it's your gym. It's a little bit more like home. It's your space a little bit more than,
Yeah, you pay a membership.
Right.
You're regularly involved. Like you kind of have a little more stake in it.
And so I don't know if there's a perfect solution to any of this, but I find it interesting, and tell me what you think. But I find it interesting that I think both guys and girls in the gym, in the fitness industry, want someone who works out. Right? Yep. They want fitness bay, like they want a significant other who also works out. Maybe not specifically with them, like they're not working out together, but they want somebody fit. They want somebody in the same realm and spheres and interests as each other. So why is it weird that
you would use that as the pool at which you swim in?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it'd be like, man, I'm like really attracted to this girl or whatever at the gym. But if I just met her outside of the gym, then we could have a regular conversation. But would I know specifically that they go to the gym if we're outside the gym setting?
Right.
And so it's kind of this weird conundrum, this impossible situation, I think, that you're talking about, of like, I want to find someone who's into fitness and health and all of those things.
So where would you go?
So where would I go? Presumably the gym, but then now it's weird to approach people at the gym in that way. And so,
well, once again, this is just another example of how men have ruined it for everybody because they've been gross and rude and disrespectful. And it's just sad. But I do have a question for you.
Okay.
What is an unknown about gym girls that you wish that you had the answer to? What is a question that you could ask the gym rat version, female version of you that you'd want to know the answer to?
I think we've already touched on it. I think we've already kind of talked about it a little bit of why is it so weird to approach someone in the gym setting and it be so weird and strange. That's just, I think you're right. I think guys have ruined it, guys in general, but I would encourage ladies, like, if you're up for it, give the next person who approaches you in the gym a chance, at least just to get to know them. I'm not saying you got to marry them or even commit to anything long term, but they think you're attractive. If you agree with that on a surface level basis, maybe have a conversation with them, because at the end of the day, I know this is going to be sacrilegious, but the gym might not be the most important thing. And so,
ooh, that's crazy town.
I love the gym. I spend a lot of time in the gym. My whole career is, focused around fitness right now. And so I know that's kind of crazy talk, but, at the end of the day, it's about relationships, right? Everything that we do in life is about relationships. It's about other people. And so if we can't build relationships, whether it be at the gym or anywhere else, what are we doing?
Right.
And I think one of the things, like when I had a point in my journey as someone who's into fitness, where I just fell out of love with the gym. I was doing it. I was being disciplined, all those things. I was, checking all the boxes, but I was just like, man, why don't I love this as much as I used to? I'm just getting through it. Right. And I had to have a conversation with the Lord and just be like, okay, God, what's going on here? And he very clearly told me, through a bunch of prayer, and just seeking of the Holy Spirit, was just saying, it's because God, am not in it. And I was like, well, what does that mean? It's like, dude, you go in, you put your headphones on, you don't talk to anybody, and you just go, and it's very selfish, right? The gym is a very selfish place for you. And I was like, it's kind of the point, right? It's like my time, and I'm working on myself. And he's like, yeah, but allow room for me, right? And so I began developing rules for myself of okay, when I walk in the gym, it's like, okay, God, who do you want me to talk to today? If anybody, right? Sometimes it's nobody, right? Sometimes it's just enjoy your workout, do your thing, whatever. Sometimes I see someone, another guy or whatever across the gym. It's like, hey, go encourage them, go talk to them, whatever. Just go get to know them. And then, and a particular rule that I've made for myself, and I very highly encourage this for all gym bros and gym girls, I think too, is whenever you feel this sense of, whether it be jealousy or just competitive rivalness, that guys have, between, if you can look across the gym and see somebody and it's like, that person,
he looks like what I want to look like,
and you maybe so, or maybe you've never talked to them, you've never spoken to them, you just casually see each other every once in a while, and there's this unspoken rivalry between you two. Or maybe it's like, wow, that guy's a douchebag, right? My rule when I have those thoughts and when I have those feelings is I have to go talk to that person, because it is so hard. And what I found is it's so hard to hate somebody when you've had a conversation with them. Not once have I had that thought, gone and talked to somebody and been like, yep, that guy's a douchebag. Wow. I'm glad I confirmed that. Most of the time, and I'll say this, some of my best gym friends was because I went up to them and I was like, hey, what's going on? I'm Karson. And then later I'd be like, I thought you were a douchebag when I first saw you. Right. And we became great friends. And I just think that's a healthy thing for us as gym people to do, because it is very selfish.
Right.
It is such a selfish endeavor. And it can become toxic to oneself to go in and not talk to anybody, because life is about other people. Life is about relationships. That is what God created us for. And to make it a purely selfish endeavor, I think is doing a disservice to yourself and those around you. And so go talk to people, right? And don't be offended and don't feel put out when other people talk to you.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I mean, I really relate to that. Just fundamental idea that if you just create a version of someone in your head, it's really easy to hate them,
right,
and to think less of them and to judge them, because it makes your insecurity, it turns your insecurity into justified kind of feelings, where it's like that person is really strong and built and big, and there's a cute girl that I look at, or who I know who goes to my gym, and she's friends with him, and so he's probably a terrible person and she should not talk to him and she should talk to me. And it's like, that's really easy to do when you don't spend the time to get to know him or introduce yourself. So I love that rule. I won't probably take your advice on it as much as I should, because I don't like approaching strangers in general. But I agree. I understand that value, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, for sure. And like for you, like, you know, have you ever had anybody like come up to you and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, have you whether you're behind the camera, I know you do a lot of fitness photography and videography and stuff like that, or just like while you're getting your workout or anything like that?
I've never. Are you talking about like specifically like female attention?
Either one, male or female.
I've never had a woman,
very rare, come
up to me and just start a conversation. Period. End of story.
Me either.
Ever in my life, in any scenario.
Fair.
Now, I've had women come up to me because they had a specific thing they needed to talk about, and or, you know, there was a kind of secondary thing that was like, this is not about me wanting to talk to you.
Right.
But I have never experienced in my life a woman who's like, I noticed you. I thought, oh, cool. Let me go talk to him. Let's see what he's about.
Yeah.
That's never happened to me. Now, I think as a general rule, women don't tend to do that because they don't need to do that, because there's plenty of men who will do it instead of them, and nor should they necessarily. Like, I don't think you have to, and I think it's fine if you do. Like, I don't think it says anything about you one way or another if you do or don't.
No. On
face value. If there's specific reasons why you do or don't, that's a separate story, because maybe those reasons are stupid. So I've never had that happen. I've had guys come up to me if they notice something about what I'm wearing, or if I have a camera in my hand and they kind of want to ask questions. But that's rare, and that's normally it's a very similar personality type who just goes up and talks to people, and that's kind of who they are. So no, I haven't ever had that. And I think I don't think women necessarily understand that the majority of the male experience is to have almost no interest in you from the worldly from a worldly perspective. Like, it's not, men do not have any fundamental understanding of what it's like to go get out of your car at the gas station and have to think about who might be looking at you. Like, men do not understand that. Mm-hmm. I think there's like the small percentage of men who are super attractive and super successful and have the stuff, and they are approached probably more frequently at like events and clubs and bars and things. But it is so rare for that to happen in my experience and in everyone I know. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And
so I think that's also just that's a conversation that men and women aren't having, like as friends, which is, I don't know what it's like to be attractive in general to the world. Like, because men are people who catcall and who are overly affectionate and complimentary in even the wrong ways, and often the wrong ways, because men are so vocal about their attraction, women often know whether or not the people around them are attracted to them or not.
Fair.
Whether or not they believe them, whether or not they take it seriously, that's a whole separate conversation. And obviously there's ways to compliment people where it's meaningful, and there's ways that are gross and they don't land in any sort of meaningful way. So I get that. But as a general rule, men do not have this normal experience of people giving them physical compliments.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen for a lot of good reasons, because when men do tend to get those compliments, they tend to misuse them and they tend to read into them the wrong way and they ruin it, right? And they make people wish they never complimented them because it's just like, oh, I wasn't trying to take it there and you took it there.
Right.
But no, to answer your question, I've never really had that. I would love that. Like it's sad, but like even if it was someone I wasn't maybe attracted to,
right,
for someone to come up to me and be like, hey, I think you look great, or, you know, something about you caught my eye and I want to talk to you, that's awesome to me. And so it's hard for me to realize why women hate it, but then I don't have the 1 million experiences and 90% of them being bad to then have the context of, oh, that's why it's upsetting to you. Yeah. And so there's that disconnect that's hard.
Absolutely.
And and that's something I want to learn how to navigate. Like I'm still new to some of this because I am trying to build friendships with women where where there's not romantic tension always lingering in the air to where we have to always be playing the game of like, I have to present myself in a certain way because you might be dating a potential, date. And I think men do that. I think men always think of all women in their lives as potential dates. And so that's why they keep them around, or they have no attraction, so they don't prioritize them, which is awful. But I do think it's real. It's like sad, but I've intentionally tried to invest in relationships and friendships with women, even if they might not be potential romantic partners, because I want to learn. Like I'm sick of being in conversations with men where we're all complaining about women, quote unquote. And then I'm in conversations on a date or something, and I hear all the complaints about men. And I'm like, we are not having the same conversation. We're not talking about the same things. We are on super different pages. And that's sad. Like, no wonder we're all these like weird, like political drama games that we're playing of like, oh, social politics here, and oh, romantic, like romance politics here. And here's the right way to do this. And here's the right game to play. And here's how you do, like, there's so much just crap that we're all just trying to like fight through. And I'm like, wouldn't it be easier if you just said, hey, nothing here, so just help me understand.
Right.
And I've been trying to do that because I keep running into this person's complaining about being approached, and this person's complaining about having no one approach them. This person is approaching other people and they're getting rejected all the time. And this person's talking about how I wish men were more old school and like came up and just asked you out. And I'm like, well, this girl is telling me how she hates that. And she's just trying to like totally do her own thing. And this girl's like, men are just not men anymore. And then, oh, I really appreciate how this person shoots their shots, and that confidence is really attractive. And I like that. And other people are like, that level of confidence makes me feel like they're pushing themselves on me, and I feel uncomfortable and a little harassed. And I'm like,
what do I do?
Like, I feel like there's no way to win. And so like, let's just not play, because I don't want to lose.
And I think you kind of touched on it right there of it feels like a game that nobody knows the rules to. But
none of us know the rules.
No one can agree to the rules.
But we all feel like there are rules that we're supposed to play by.
Yes. Perfect. Yes. Yeah, and I think that's the same. Like, because like, for instance, I went on a date a couple months ago. Great date. Really liked the girl. I got home. I was talking to my roommate and his girlfriend. Two totally different opinions on how I should text her. Should I wait? Should I text her immediately? Say, hey, I had a great time.
Yeah.
Should I wait and make her think about me all day and make her like wonder
play
why
hard to get,
play hard to get, or
yeah.
like what, like what's the right answer? And that's just a microcosm on all the things that go through guys' heads of, okay, how do I play this game? And then I'm sure the girls have their own set of game and rule and all that stuff and expectations on how things should go. And how they want to be treated by men and how they think their date should go and be and act and whatever. Because I know there's girls out there who like, I'm very old school. I'm going to open the door for you every single time. I'm going to pay for everything and do all of the things that traditional, chivalrous, old school men do. That's how I was raised. That's how I'm going to approach it. But I know that there's girls out there who are like, that's too much.
Right. It's almost it's a offense to their independence.
Yes, I would say that, but also like, I think it's just like almost comes off as try hard.
Right.
Of like, man, he walked me to my car and opened the door for me, and all of this stuff is like, man, that's a lot. And I'm like
you're almost
is that not the expectation? Like,
right.
What am I supposed to do?
It's like you're
here?
creating pressure,
right?
Because her experience up to now is the only reason a man would do that is if they were already infatuated with you. And so for you to treat her like that, because it's what you believe is the respectable and chivalrous thing to do, you did that because that's what you do for anybody you're on a date with.
Right.
But for her experience with men is men would never think to treat her that well unless they were already madly in love with her. And so just by you doing that, you created a sense of pressure on the relationship that she felt. And it backfires, which is so sad.
So what should I do? Should I stop opening doors for people? Should I stop? And that's where I'm caught. And I think I'm going to speak for myself. That's where I feel caught a lot of times. Of, man, did I put too much pressure on the thing? And like, was I too forward? Because of course you psychoanalyze every single date that you go on afterwards. Right. You're like, did I say the right thing? Did I do the right things? Was she impressed with me? Was she bored? How'd the date go?
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's maybe y'all just weren't on the same wavelength.
Yeah. I think I've run into that too, where, I know that I'm a deep thinker and a deep feeler, and I'm very into unpacking feelings. And obviously, like, look what I've done. I've basically set up myself a reason to have deep conversations.
I will say, Dave, one of the things that I love about you as a friend and as an individual is just your ability to be introspective. And I love the fact that we can have deep conversations, whether we're in front of a camera,
right,
or out at dinner or whatever we're doing. Like, I love the fact that you are who you are and that you have that introspection, that depth to you that not a lot of guys express, at least openly. I think everybody has the capacity for it.
I think they feel it, yeah.
They feel it, but I think a lot of guys are afraid to express that. And
they're not encouraged to. Well, first of all, thank you. Yeah. I really appreciate that. That's one of my favorite things about you as well, is that you have the capacity to engage in that and the interest to, because I agree with you, like you're saying, there's not a lot of men who regularly make space for those types of conversations with other men. But what I was going to say to what you said of like, do you just stop opening doors for people because you get some feedback that was like too much, like that was treating the relationship like it was farther along than it really is. And I've wrestled with that too, because I'm like, hey, should I just keep like long-term plans and goals like off the conversation table for a little bit? Like, is talking about the fact that I'm excited to be a father someday too much to talk about before dates 4 or 6? And I've wrestled with that because I want to be respectful of people's boundaries, emotional and otherwise. And I think people sometimes just grow up in a culture where they haven't experienced that. And so I don't want to put something in front of them that's overwhelming when it doesn't need to be. And then I think, you know what, at the end of the day, I want to be with someone who says, Dave, the fact that you love to bake and that you think about your kids' names and that you're saving for their college now, like, you told me that on the second day and I loved that.
Yeah.
Like, I think I want to be with someone who not just tolerates, you know, or doesn't run away from that, but says that's actually a character quality and that's a heart thing that I'm drawn to. And I'm willing to lose out on the beautiful girl who's trendy and super fit and super fun and whatever, but who says, oh, Dave, you're too sensitive and a little too not, like a little too effeminate and a little too whatever. You're not the like man's man that I want. You're not the muscular, big, kind of strong protector that I see myself with. And I'm willing to lose out on that because I think what will be ultimately more rewarding to me is having some like waking up with someone every day and knowing that like the reason they said yes to me was because I was willing to be vulnerable enough to talk about the things that as a general rule are not like hot topics amongst the like locker room. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And we were talking about this earlier, which was, I do think we are kind of in a culture where we're talking about like men need to learn how to have like feel their feelings. Do you think that's genuine? Like, do you think that that's actually how everyone feels? Or do you think that's kind of the token, like, well, toxic masculinity is a problem and men who are, you know, being abusive and using their powers for evil in some way, that needs to stop. And obviously that's despicable.
For sure.
But like, do you really think that on the whole, people are being drawn in by men who are dipping their toes into their sensitive kind of feelings? Or do you think we're supposed to be talking about that because we want men to do that, but it might not be a genuine feeling that's across the board going on? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a deep question, lots to unpack, and I think just right off the rip, one of the things that I feel from what I see, one, it is a lot more acceptable, at least in a public sphere, and I'll very specifically say in a public sphere of Instagram, whatever, to be vulnerable, right? Especially around things like anxiety, depression, that type of thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of support for people.
A lot of
who are
support,
doing that.
right?
Absolutely.
And
and rightfully so.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so good. And I think that we're talking about that 80-90% of suicides are male suicides, right? That most men struggle with anxiety and depression. Most, you know, I think we talked about earlier, and I don't know the exact statistic, but like something like only 20% of men don't have a close male friend that they can confide in.
Yeah, feel like they have one. Only 20% feel like they do have one.
They do have one.
Yeah.
Right. 20% of men feel like they have a close male friend that they can share their feelings with, share their deepest thoughts and stuff like that.
In like a safe way.
In a safe way.
Right.
You know, and so I think we're making strides in that direction, but at the same time, there is a feeling from both sexes, from men and from women, where it's like, yeah, but that's messy, right? And that's and so there's, when you express those things, it's like, you know, you're going to alienate some people, right? When you, whether it be on social media or whether it be with a person to person in a group setting, depending on the relationship, it's like, hey, I struggle with this thing, right? Anxiety, depression, whatever. Think that social media is quick to rally around and be like, yeah, like you got this, like so many things, encouragement and all that stuff, which feels great, but really, like, and I don't know this because this isn't something that I necessarily struggle with, how many people like actually reach out on a personal level and say, hey, call me,
right? Let's
chat, you know, because I think there's a social pressure to say and do the right thing and have this outward facing. Yeah, I mean, we can all agree suicide is bad, right? Depression is bad. We need to eradicate this thing. But it's how many people are really willing to step into that and be a true friend as a male and come next alongside somebody and help them walk through that, you know? And then I think the second part of that is, I think in a lot of ways men have forgotten what it is to be a man. I think there's an idea of masculinity that's out there. I think most referred to as toxic masculinity, of like men aren't supposed to share their feelings. Men are supposed to do it alone. Most men are supposed to be strong,
exert their power to show their value.
Exactly.
Right.
When I believe that men were created, yes, as the apex predator, right? As the capstone of God's creation to rule over the earth, but also we're created as pack animals. Like we are very tribal in nature, and the individualism that has come from years of, where we are as a society, and individualism, and just how we've evolved as a species, I think has told men and put this picture of men as, you're supposed to be able to do it on your own. You're supposed to have everything together. You're supposed to support your family and just be a man. Like, stop complaining, pull up your bootstraps, and get it done. And I think that there is a sense of that, but I think the way God created us is to be able to step into a sense of masculinity that we can both express our feelings to other men as a sense of community and feel support there that isn't shameful, right? Because when you think about adolescence, you think about junior high, you think about high school, you share your feelings as a junior or as a high school student in the locker room, and you're never going to live that down.
Right.
No matter what you share. And like, it's sad, and it's you're just growing up and boys will be boys type thing. But at the end of the table, it's like, man, if that's what we learn when we're in our adolescence and our formative years, how much more has that carried over into our adulthood?
Yeah.
And now that we are armed with that knowledge, how do we combat that? Because I very much guarantee you that every single guy wants to be able to have a close male friend that they can share their feelings with and share intimate parts of their life with. That they don't have that person, and they feel like if they did share that with a friend, that they'd be judged, that they would be ostracized, that they'd be made fun of, that they would be looked on as different, and stuff like that. So most men, I think, just choose to not even go there, not even put themselves out there.
Yeah. What advice do you see women giving men in the dating arena? Like, have you received dating advice from women, friends, and or have you seen your female friends give dating advice to other men? And generally, what is that advice that you've seen, at least?
I think kind of like what we were talking about earlier, it's all over the place. And it is very different depending on who you talk to, the friend you talk to, and depending on whether it's a single friend or if it's a married friend, because that's two very different pieces of advice.
Right. That's huge.
And in general, I think that for women, women giving men advice, it's just be you, be authentic. Like, she's crazy not to like you, like all those things. And then it doesn't work out. And they're like, wait, I was being myself, right? Like we were talking about earlier, like I was being myself. What happened? And I think it just comes down to, I don't think that advice is wrong.
It's incomplete.
I think it's incomplete in that the person that you might be talking to and might be genuinely authentic with might not like you. And that's okay. Right. And I think one of the things I wanted to say kind of with what you were talking about earlier is you were hitting on this so well of you have to be the person that you want to attract. Right. If you want to attract someone who is superficial and shallow and just looking for a fling and whatever, then you're probably going to act a certain way. Right. And I think everybody can think of that person right off the bat. Right. But if you want to have a relationship with somebody and attract somebody who appreciates you for who you are, then you're going to be who you are. And for me, like kind of going back to the old school chivalrous, like all those things, I might be backing myself into a corner here, but I want my girlfriend, wife, whatever, I want her to leave me if I stop doing those things for her. Right?
Yeah.
Because
I want someone who values that.
I want someone who values that. I want someone to feel like, wow, this guy treats me like a queen every single day. And as soon as I lose that, okay, something's wrong. Right? And let's figure this out.
Yeah.
You know, because that's important to me, and that's one of the ways I show respect.
Right.
And I show love to whoever I'm taking out. And that to me again is a bare minimum for taking someone out on a date.
Do you think that, so I agree with you. I often see the advice women give men when it comes to dating. The advice they give is around character and around depth of emotion. Like, hey, women really value men who can say how they feel. Women really value men who can communicate their intentions clearly. And so just be that, and that will set yourself apart. Do you think that's what men are telling each other in terms of advice?
Absolutely not.
Okay, you laugh at that as like it's crazy, and I agree with you, but yeah, unpack that.
I think that like every advice I've ever gotten from men and whatever, I think is more along the lines of like, play bad boy, play hard to get, be stoic, leave room for mystery and stuff like that. And then like from the women's perspective, it's like, no, I want to know everything about you. And like, and the advice that I get from women is, I want to know everything about you. And it's very emotional and like all this stuff. I want you to be able to share your feelings. And so it's like, okay, who do I listen to? And are either people telling me the truth or like you said, the complete picture of that interaction? Because I think maybe there is something to being strong and stoic and being a protector and a provider and all those things, which I think are appropriate.
Yeah.
And then, and being a hard outerior shell. And then, but with her, with the one that you're engaging with and interacting with in a romantic relationship with, it is a softness and a tenderness and an emotional agreement on who we are. We can be authentic. We can let the walls down as guys.
That's beautiful, man. So here's my point in asking this. The men who have the attention of women, right? So the small percentage that have the majority of the options. Shouldn't the advice that they're giving men to what those men can do to get to the place that they are, shouldn't that be the same as the advice women are giving men as to what would get their attention and get their time?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't that make sense?
For sure.
If both people were being honest, like genuinely honest, if women are generally picking a certain group or type of person for a specific reason, wouldn't they communicate that to the people who aren't in that category to say, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for. This is kind of what we are looking for. And the men who are in that category, wouldn't they be saying, hey, this is why women pick me, and so you should do some of these things? Like, shouldn't that conversation be the same in an idea, in a common sense world? Wouldn't that be the case?
I think absolutely. Like, I think, yeah.
So why isn't it? That's my point. And once again, I don't have the answer. Like, I don't know what to do about it, and I don't know that there is a right answer because there's no good like solution where everyone wins and everyone's happy. But what's hard for me is to be told, hey, these things really matter to me as a woman, so you should do these things. And yet, when I look at who has success in the world, the dominating characteristics of those people are not the things you just said. And that's hard. Like, how do I reconcile what you're telling me is I should be this way to be with you, essentially. And yet, none of the things you just said describe the people you've been with.
Yeah.
So, do you say that? Do you say like, hey, you keep telling me that like you really value men who are super this way, but you're not that way. So like, what's happening there? What am I missing?
I'm going to just throw some stuff against the wall and see if it sticks, and maybe we can talk this out, and maybe the people who are watching can form their opinion on us as men, or cancel us, or whatever it looks like.
I'm literally just asking questions because I am lost.
Yeah, for sure.
And I want to navigate relationships well.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful and kind, and I want to learn how to be effective in my communication and in my relationships. Yeah. But I also want to speak the things that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And when I see stuff that doesn't make sense, I want to clarify it. And so that's what I'm doing. So I have a lot of ignorance, obviously. So I present this to you for your thoughts.
To be clear, I am single, and I do not have all the answers, and I don't know. I think we're speaking like men are from Mars and women are from Venus.
Sure.
Mentality here, but from my perspective, maybe I should ask this to you as kind of a rebuttal question of, do you think it's possible?
Probably not.
Do you think it's possible that women in general, I'm not saying all women, that women settle? They say that they want this expectation, but they end up settling for the things that we see from other guys and the advice that we're getting from other guys.
Okay, I'm gonna.
That might be loaded.
No, it's loaded, and I'm gonna try to answer this, as honestly as I can, and I want to preface it with, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I really want to preface this with, women are smarter than me. Women are more mature than me. And I don't know, I don't claim to know what people really are doing, but here's my suspicion. There's an ideal of what we know is good for us and what we believe to be right and healthy and smart. Rarely are the things that are right and healthy and smart also desirable in the immediate term. And so, in the same way where people want instant success, instant gratification, and they put certain things in their body to get their body to look a certain way. They cut some corners, maybe even legally, to get a certain amount of money or to get a certain opportunity. We know that that's not wise. We know that it's not the good choice, but there's a temptation of immediate gratification that is presented to us, and we take it. We take the shortcut. I think that all humans, when it comes to our relationships, we have the ideal of what we want long term, but then we have these immediate gratifications that we want. And I think that the stereotypical bad boy, whatever that persona is, whatever that person is that we now make jokes about, where now I see women post memes about, oh, why am I always attracted to the guy with 17 red flags? And I'm heartbroken about him, and I'm sad for a while, and I hate myself because of it. That is a real thing. Like that's become a stereotype because of how often it happens. I think that stereotype, or that persona, that bad boy persona that men are teaching other men to do to get hookups, that men are talking to each other about, hey, if you just like totally don't show interest, she'll want you because she can't have you, and that's what you should be doing. I think that persona provides a lot of immediate gratification in relationships, but it doesn't provide long-term. And so there is something about wanting someone you can't have. I get that. So I do like the idea of chasing down something you can't get, especially when you're used to getting everything you want, which I think for women is more common than it is for men. Like women have more access to relationships than men do on the whole, because men want surface level and shallow things. And so they'll say yes to a certain amount more frequently. But I don't think women are settling. I think women, there's immediate gratification of status, success, money, opportunities, things that are valuable and are generally like attractive qualities. Like I get like a dude's good looking, he's tall, he can protect me, he has money, he can pay for me, he can provide for me. Like those are all really attractive things. I totally get it. But often they don't also come with all the character qualities that you might want for a husband, that you might want for the father of your children. And so I think they say yes to relationships for an immediate gratification of attraction, chemistry, whatever. And then because I think women are feelers more than men are, and they can connect emotionally much better than men can, they actually can truly fall for people who aren't good for them. And that's hard. It's hard to get out of a relationship where you're in love with someone who doesn't love you back. Like that's hard. And so I actually have a lot of empathy for people who are with people who are not good for them, especially women, because I think they do have genuine love and connection and attachment. And so my point would be, well, you should discern before you say yes. Like the work needs to happen before you make decisions, because ultimately, no matter the empathy I have for you, you are still responsible for your own decisions. And so I can feel and I can understand and I can have context, but it doesn't mean you're not responsible. And so I don't think women are, to answer your question, I don't think they're necessarily settling. I'm sure some people are, but I think people are saying yes to the shortcut, the dopamine hit of having a relationship, having an attractive partner, having someone who pays for stuff and buys me things and makes me feel pretty, getting someone I didn't think I could have. Like those are all really desirable things. But I think oftentimes they don't do the hard work of, and the delayed gratification of, I'll actually wait for someone who I know does all the other things well too.
Okay, let me revise my working theory then.
Yeah.
Okay. What if it's a hierarchy of needs, right? Of base level.
Maslow, let's go.
Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? It's a base level of, can they protect me? Can they provide for me? You know, do I feel safe with this person? Like, are they generally nice enough? Like they're not abusive, they're not, toxic and whatever, as kind of a base level. And then kind of stepping up is what you get and you hear from girls. Cause like you said, the ideal of like the peak is like, oh, someone who like I can share my life with, we can grow old with, and we just know each other's feelings and everything. And there's no secrets and all of these things where, from a needs perspective for women, it's like, okay, the base level. And then it's like, okay, now we creep up into, okay, is this person genuinely friendly with people? Do they have good friends? Do people say good things about them?
Right.
Are they someone who truly listens? Are they someone who can speak their emotions intelligently? And then kind of, I think another level on top of that is like, are they willing to go to battle for me? And are they willing to do whatever it takes for myself and for women, it's for myself and for my kids, right? For the family unit, because, that is the most important thing. And I think that when I say settle, maybe a more accurate term is like, they just kind of stop after the first rung or first level of the pyramid and say, hey, like checks a lot of boxes, but not really any red flags, but maybe like not a completely ideal man, but maybe the perfect man is not out there.
I think that's an excellent theory. I think that's probably true. Here's my biggest complaint about current culture is that the standard is just no red flags.
Yes.
And I've always wrestled with that. It's like,
where are the green flags?
Right.
Where are the green flags? Where are the, like, yes, go, collect $200, like, let's go, let's do this.
Right. Like, the fact that your reason for engaging in a relationship with someone is because they just don't have that many problems. Like, when you have to go to just the lack of negatives versus the overwhelming presence of positives and of good things, that's hard for me. Wow. Like, you deserve someone who isn't just not rude. You deserve someone who's not just not disrespectful. You deserve someone who's not just not impatient and selfish. Like, you deserve to be with someone who is kind, who takes initiative to show compassion to you, to serve you, to ask about what you need, to be proactive in loving you, and not waiting for you to complain and then solving it. Like, that should be the standard. And I get that at this point, people are so garbage that we have to just say, well, as long as they're not doing X, Y, and Z, like, I'll go on a date with them, or I'll date them, or I'll do whatever. And I get that I might be living in this utopia of, oh, Dave, people like that aren't out there. And my response is, they're just not always that good looking. Like, the unfortunate reality is people who are very attractive have had a life experience of things being given to them at a higher rate than anybody else. And by definition, when something is free, it is of no value. Literally, free equals zero value. When you walk out of the store and someone like hands you a stuffed animal as like a free present, and it's like, oh great, this is to remember my time here. And as you're walking, as you get to the car, you drop it in the mud. Your thought is immediately, I didn't pay for it. It's fine.
Right. If
you saved up for 3 months to buy a TV, not only would you be devastated if it broke in the parking lot, you are having all 6 friends carrying it so preciously, and you're making sure that there's no chance that any damage happens to it.
Right.
And that's literally how relationships work. When you have had to work and put effort and develop character and sacrifice and build skills that are required to keep someone in a relationship, you understand the value. And so you treat it with care, and you don't risk losing it. And people who have been given a free relationship with absolutely no effort put in, and they got the yes, why in the world would you expect them to do any work to keep it around? Because guess what? When they said yes to you, they also had 6 other offers. So when you become somewhat of an inconvenience to them, their mindset is, I can get rid of you and go to the next person. Like, that's a really cynical view, and I get that it's a generalization, and obviously not all attractive people are terrible people, right? Like, absolutely not. But the fundamental concept is, there are people who have an abundance of green flags, but they might not have the green flags in all these surface level things that matter. And I get chemistry matters. You shouldn't date someone that you're unattracted to. I totally agree with that. But I think the gray area is not nearly wide enough. Like, I think people are like, it needs to be an 8 or higher, or I won't even consider it. Yeah. And it's like, I know, but that 7, that dude will change your life. Like, that dude will love you so well that you didn't even realize what you were missing out on. Right. That, and not that people should be rated as numbers. I'm just using that as an example of someone who you might not be as attracted to could change your life because of how well they love you. Right. And as someone who identifies in that category of like, I'm not the take notice person that I'm going to walk into a space and people are like, oh, look who it is. I believe that the way that I've been raised and my character and my effort in how I treat people has provided me an offering that I can give that could be so much better than whatever the surface level things are. And I sit here and I look at the women that I would love to be with, choosing men who are very different from me, who meet a lot of the qualifications I don't have. And I want to be clear, I am not miserable and just sad and hating the world and like no one likes me and no girls want to date me. Like, no, I've been very fortunate to have really great, meaningful relationships with really beautiful, awesome women in my life. So I'm also not trying to say like, oh, all women just want hot, rich men and they don't treat anyone else with any sort of taking them seriously. Absolutely not. I just think that there are two different conversations happening. Because I think when men ask women for dating advice, women are answering a question that men didn't ask. Women are answering the question of, how do you keep someone who's already attracted to you and interested in you around? And men are asking, how can I get someone to just be attracted to me? Because it is true. I think women are honest in that they do want men who communicate intentions and who open up about their feelings. Because I think that's important. I don't think they're being dishonest. I think there's a missing piece of like, but you should also, be interesting and be a hard worker and have some level of health, fitness in your life that's attractive. And then also remember, hey, if you are liking a girl or you're wanting a girl's attention and you know that she's very attracted to 6'5" football players and that's not you, like the wisdom is to not complain about how she's shallow. The wisdom is to say she has a preference and you're not in that category. And it's not about value. It's just about preference.
Right.
It's not vertical value. It's horizontal. Like we have preferences, but we live in a world now where like to have preferences is to be discriminatory and to be surface level. And that's hard. And I get it. And I know that it's nuanced and I don't have the answers and I'm stupid and all those things. But I do wish that there was a little bit more honesty of like, hey, you should probably refocus your attention on people that are interested in who you are and not trying to become the thing that that person is interested in. That was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. I think you hit on a lot of great things, that there is nuance there. There is a lack of red flags isn't a meaning to have a good relationship with someone. Like, look for the green flags in people.
Know what your green flags are.
Know what your green flags are, for sure. Yeah. And be able to check those boxes. And I think that you're right. I think that girls and guys, when asking for dating advice, it's like we're speaking on different levels, right? Girls are speaking on an idealized level and guys are like, how do I get in the door? Right. And it's like girls are like, hey, we're penthouse level, like perfect dream guy that they've, because they've been thinking about this thing.
Right.
Like girls think about their future husband,
we sure do,
whatever, and all that stuff at a much higher level than guys do. I think that guys are obviously a lot later to the party on a lot of stuff.
Almost all of them.
Almost all the things, and so for guys, it's just how do I get in the door? Yeah, and then we could worry about climbing all the stairs. Right. And so I think that's wise of like realizing, okay, let me get in the door. Mm-hmm. Let's get settled. Let's figure this out, and like just give me some time. And so maybe there's a message to girls out there of like, maybe give guys a little bit more of a shot.
Yeah, and I'm really not trying to say like, hey, no. People need to be doing more of this. We need to be doing more of this. I really just want to be like, just so you know, sure, these conversations are happening.
Right.
And here might be some insight that I have, and I would love your insight, know?
And here's something very interesting. So I was a pastor for 9 years. And we ran a Bible study with seniors, and every fall we would
in high school.
And seniors in high school.
Yeah.
And so 17, 18-year-olds. We would do a senior Bible study with just the seniors and the pastors over sex, intimacy, relationships, things like that. And we always started the Bible study. We would split up guys and girls. Girls go in this room, talk to the the girl pastors, whatever, and then guys go in this room, talk to the guy pastors. And we started with a brainstorming list of, okay, guys, why do you want to get married? Right? What are the reasons that you or just be in a relationship or whatever? Like of course we're in a church context, so
right,
marriage was kind of the goal.
Yeah.
The goal. Inevitably the first thing was like, just be in a relationship. The first thing the guys were thinking was sex.
Yeah.
And that was inevitably on the paper. And most of the time, like, we kind of got to the point where we're like, okay, I'm going to write this up there for you guys.
Because you're not going to say it.
Because you're not mature enough to say it, or maybe it's going to take a little bit for you to get there. But we're going to write this up there so that, yes, we get, like, sexual intimacy is amazing. Right. But what else? And it was so amazing to see the maturity of 17, 18-year-olds, that they had the foresight, and when they really sat down and thought about it and really challenged to think about it, the things that they wanted in a relationship. And they were talking about the things that that girls desire.
Yeah.
Right? And it was crazy. Like, and so, like, we'd write them on this piece of, like, paper, like this huge, like, storyboard type piece of paper, like with the giant sticky notes. And then the next week we'd come together and we'd stick them on the wall next to each other. And, like, it'd be amazing the similarities that they had next to each other. But it's so funny that when we have these conversations with the opposite sex, it's like, how are we so far off? Right. And it always amazed me that the guys, and the girls, like, they had the maturity to, like, when they really sat down and thought about it,
right,
they said, this is what I want. And it was around the things of intimacy with a partner that I can share my life with, and have that deep relationship with, that's more than a friendship, that they can know me and I can know them in a way that nobody else does. Like, that's what it came down to at the end of the day. And guys said that. High school guys said that. And that always just blew me away. And also proved to me that we are on the same page.
No, it's there, right?
It is there.
Yeah.
But I think, like we were talking about a little bit earlier, that we get stuck on the surface level of, wow, they're really attractive. Like, let's go in, right? And let's keep it there, and then the reason that we get lost in relationships, and that we, I think we break up, we divorce, we, have these difficult times in the relationship, is that we lose sight of what's the most important thing. And right, you're right. There's a preference, right, that you got to figure out during dating, but there's a level of, like, okay, once we get to a certain point, we know that we're like, we are what
we have, the chemistry
we have the chemistry, and we're what with the
compatibility and those things. Yeah.
And so, okay, now let's work on we want to be best friends. We want to, be intimate with each other in an emotional level, and have that person that we can confide in and lean on, and all of those things. And again, I was just so, it was every year, like, again, pastor for 9 years, like, did this tons of times, and it was always the same.
Do you think that men get confused by hearing what women say they want and seeing the men they actually choose to date?
I don't know. I don't know if I can speak for all men.
Have you ever been confused?
Yes. I can say that I have been confused. There's definitely been times where I, like, look at some of these relationships, and I'm just like, man, like, how does this work? Because obviously I'm missing something.
Yeah.
And and of course, like, quick pet peeve. Every time somebody says, you're going to find the right one, it's just like, you just got to be patient. Like, they're out there. Like, all of those things. I'm just like, shut up. Because 99% of the time it comes from an already married person, or already in a deep relationship person. And it's just like, you already have the prize. Like, of course that's your perspective. And it's a platitude that's not, I don't believe is helpful for, for a lot of time, for a lot of single people out there. And so, do I get confused by, like, the messages that I'm seeing versus both verbal and nonverbal of, like, when I look at other couples, I'm like, what the heck? How does this work? That is, like, I'm missing something. And then verbally from, you ask for dating advice, and it's just like, what do I believe? What do I try and
do
attack?
I believe what you're saying to me, or do I believe how you're acting?
Yeah. And that's, and I think sometimes those can be very different things.
Have you ever had a friend who was a girl complain to you about her boyfriend and thought, I cannot imagine behaving that way and ever being in a relationship? Like, how is that not immediate breakup material? Like, have you ever been in a conversation where a girl is kind of confiding in you the frustrations or behaviors that her boyfriend was doing, and you just thought, how can you possibly be justifying a relationship with someone who treats you like that way?
Yes. And vice versa too. Like,
oh, for sure.
From guys, like, I'm like, she's toxic, get out of there. Right. But yes, like, absolutely. Like, having conversations from girls and they're like, my boyfriend did this. Is this all right? And this is okay. I'm like, no, this is not like because I think, maybe it's some naivety or whatever, if like, and you're impassioned to the other person. So maybe it's just like, oh, maybe it's just something that guys do. And I'm just not, I don't understand, And so, but yes, like to answer that question, like, yes, I've been there, and I think most people have been there
for sure.
But, and to kind of like piggyback off of that, like, do you, I think it's funny, like, cause we're both single guys.
Don't remind me.
And and it's like, okay, now we're having this conversation about relationships and difficulties.
I don't know how this ended up being about all relationships. I'm really sorry. We had a lot of other things we talked about.
No,
but anyway, continue.
It's great. Maybe we can do a part 2.
Yeah.
But I think it's funny that there's so much advice out there. Is what I'm trying to get at. Like, there's so much advice. Do this. Don't do this. Do this. wait, but this information over here that I'm getting is different or maybe contradictory to the information I'm getting from the other side. And it's just like, man, how do we navigate this? Because like we kind of used the analogy earlier, it feels like a game that we're all playing by some unspoken rules that tend to be shifting and changing depending on who we're playing against, depending on what stage of the game we're playing. And it's like, and I don't know about you, but like, I'm a very, and maybe this is me, like I'm finding something out about myself. Like, I'm a very rules-based person, and like just as simply of playing a board game, I read the rules.
Right. I have to know how to play the game.
Have to know how to play the game, and more importantly, I have to know how to win the game. And I just don't feel like that's in the playbook for relationships. It's like, is there a manual to this thing? Like, where do I start? How do I get to the finish line? I know what the finish line is. How do I get there? And it's like, and it feels like a game of chutes and ladders in a sense of like, roll the dice and like you go up a few steps and then like roll the dice again. And it's like, oh, you're sliding back down. And it's like, there doesn't seem to be a consistent pattern or a consistent set of rules to all of this, and that's the human nature in that. Right. And maybe that's the beautiful thing.
I think it's frustrating. I think it's supposed to be. Did you have a specific question there? Or do you just want me to kind of respond to this concept?
I'm just throwing the stuff out there. Again, working theories.
Yeah, no, I am that way. I want to know how to play, right? Because I don't know if I win a game if I didn't know the rules, and I want to make sure that I can be confident that I played correctly, so that when I look at the success, it's objective and it's not willy-nilly. So like
measurable, right? It needs to be measurable.
It needs to be measurable,
and kind of another, maybe this is like Silver's little thing on me of like, I also feel like I'm a rule enforcer too. Like, that's kind of like part of my personality. And so like when, like you were saying earlier, when you see other things or getting confusing advice, like I want to be, I'm like, wait. Like, that's not congruent with the rule book that I have. Right. Like, what's going on?
Right.
And so, do they get a different rule book? Can I have their rule book? Right. How do we do that?
I relate to that so much. And I was talking to someone about this the other day, but just like, the thing that's wonderful and wonderfully painful that I've seen is that women tend to have such different preferences. Like there can be one guy could be the most attractive person in the world to one woman, and to the next woman, she could care less about him. Like, because there were so many specific things outside of just specifically looks that drew them in and attracted them. And looks seem to not have as big of a percentage when it comes to attraction with women as they do for men. So like in my experience, if a woman is considered beautiful by one man, there's a very good chance that most men will also think she's attractive. Versus like, I think if one woman says, hey, I think that guy's really attractive, and there's not necessarily as good of a chance that everyone else would agree with her. Just as a general kind of rule that I've seen. I think types, and there's more factors and more nuance to attraction in my experience with women than with men.
Fair. Yeah, I see that.
And so, which means there's so many playbooks out there.
Yeah.
There's so many rules. There's so many things where it's like, how do I navigate? What's the right thing? And this is why I will always come back to, it's just not worth it. Yeah. Like I would rather be with someone and have no doubt in my mind that they picked me for me than put in a lot of effort to be as attractive as I can to enough people to draw in at least one person that I could make it work with. And ultimately, as hard as it is now, as tough as it may be that I might, lose out on fun conversations and fun hangouts with cute people that I might have a good time with, I would rather miss out on that and have full confidence that when I meet that person, it's working because we're both being authentic to who we are. Mm. And that's scary because I'm letting go. Like I'm letting go of trying to make it happen. Yeah. And then trusting that when it happens, if it happens, it will be profoundly more rewarding and meaningful and all those things.
Yeah. I think kind of as you're speaking, maybe again, continually to revise this theory on.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of work on this.
Dating and stuff like that. We're about to solve it right here.
If only.
And I think, and I do honestly believe that that's like the beautiful thing about the human experience is that everyone has different preferences. Right. Everybody's different.
For sure.
Everybody, and when you can look at somebody and be like, how the heck, a couple of them be like, how the heck did that happen? Mm-hmm. And they're just totally in love.
Right. And there's something beautiful about that.
And there's something beautiful about that.
Yeah.
And so, again, kind of sticking to game theory a little bit of like, I think for us, and men and women, I think it's a matter of finding the game that goes with your rule book, right? And if my rule book is to be chivalrous, to be totally respectful, to bend over backwards for the person that I'm dating or married to or whatever, and treat her like a queen, then I need to find a game, the female version that rule book fits, who's going to love that this is the rule book that I have.
Right. You have decided that it's more important to find the person who, yes, when you start that relationship, you're starting from the same page.
Right. And so, kind of using that game rule book analogy that we're talking about, like, I think a lot of guys have a rule book, and my temptation too is to have this rule book, but then see a game that I like and rewrite my rules to fit the game that I think I want to play, which in the end of the day is inauthentic to who I am, and it's unfair to the girl, the female, the other part of that, who is also looking for the compatible person to them. And I think you're right. I think the temptation is to read your rule book, look out there and be like, oh, there's not a lot of games that my rule book fits, and then just be like, well, guess I'll just stop looking. You know,
I think you just said something that is so profound and so true, and people don't think about it. Like, that is what's happening, is people are pretending to want something that someone else says they want in order to be in relationship with them. And then once they get what they thought they wanted, the rubber meets the road, and they actually now have to follow through on providing a type of relationship that person said they wanted. They're like, oh wait, but I was lying. And it's not even necessarily a conscious deceit that they're making. I think it's I'm overwhelmed by desire for you, that I just said things I knew you wanted to hear. And I'm sorry. Like, I think that's happening a lot, which is people are getting hurt out of genuine compassion and out of genuine desire to be with them. Like, men are gross and men are objectifying and men are definitely dating women for the wrong reason. But I think there's a bigger percentage than we think of men who have feelings for someone. They want to be with them and they don't know how to communicate what they want. And so they just go along with the person that they're crazy about and say yes. And they keep saying yes because they know that that's what they need to say to keep this relationship going. And they feel really strongly for this girl. And so they're continuing to give her what they think she wants, even though what she's ultimately going to want is someone that they could never be.
Yeah.
And then she ends up feeling betrayed because she was like, oh, you told me you wanted these things and you don't. And I think sometimes there are men who are sitting there being like, I didn't know. Like, I didn't understand. I'm not as emotionally mature as you are to be able to process things like that. And I just know I liked you and I wanted to be with you and I wanted to give you what you wanted. And yeah, they're still responsible. Like, they are still responsible for not having done the work. But I do think there's some empathy and context missing sometimes. And I think that's why a lot of women have such a bad taste in their mouth with dating men in general, because so often they feel manipulated and lied to.
Yeah. And I think what you were saying about becoming someone who, and just saying yes to that person, and them saying, I thought we were on the same page. I thought this is what you want. That's not a value statement, right? Again, that's not a value. That's a preference of like, and I think, for, I guess, like, as we're getting to the head of, okay, guys, we're practical. At least most of us are. It's like, okay, what do we do with this information that we've kind of just unearthed and uncovered? It's like, okay, what do we do? What's your, I guess, what's your advice to, okay, from all the stuff we're talking about, like, what's some practical things I think that would you want to take away from this conversation that says, okay, maybe this is what I should be doing? Because you are, we've already established you're very introspective and like, deep thinker.
Yeah.
And I think that's good. But I think, for myself as well, like, that can be so dangerous.
Yeah.
And so my question is, what do we do practically coming out of this conversation that is going to be helpful to us and that is going to push us further along down the road of finding someone who we can spend the rest of our lives with and not keep us and be in this ho-hum attitude of where's she at? Like, I guess I'm just gonna be passive about it because I think we're men, like, we're supposed to be initiators and we're supposed to, so what are some of the steps that we're going to take and you specifically, what are you going to do to kind of coming out of this conversation?
I think for me, the thing, and this conversation has just reiterated it, is I need to learn how to be not only self-aware of, but be able to articulate my own red flags. I need to know where I'm lacking. I need to know the tendencies that I have that could be dangerous to someone. Because it's the lack of awareness that leads to the unintentional hurt. And someone can have grace for you when you know where you're broken and you're working on it. It's really hard to have grace and give grace and have empathy for someone who is blind to their weaknesses and who gets defensive when they're brought up. And so for me, practically, I need to know that I have a tendency to want to be right so much that I won't listen. I have a tendency to be so prideful in my own intellect that I don't even consider for a second that I might be wrong. Like, I need to know that, and not just know it is true, but believe that it's true and be scared of that defining who I am in my relationships, that I work on it now. And so, not that you should go into your relationships and into dates and be like, hey, here's all the ways I'm broken. But I do think there's a huge level of trust that is built when someone is able to say, I suck at this. Like, I'm bad at this. And I want someone to help me grow in this. Because it's really helpful. It's really helpful when someone is asking for help when they admit that they need it. So if you come to me and say, hey, Dave, I'm really bad at remembering to post, I don't feel guilty about bugging you about it when you've come to me and said, help me. But if you don't ever come to me and I'm just like, hey, you suck at social media, like that all of a sudden becomes hurtful,
right,
and not constructive. And so the practical for me is learn where I'm lacking, learn where I'm not good, and be able to own that and have the humility to say, hey, girlfriend, you're right. I'm not listening to you. I'm not going to listen to you all the time. I'm bad at that. I'm not going to remember to make sure to say that you look really nice anytime you dress up. I'm going to just forget that you need to be reminded of that. I'm going to just assume that you know I think you're beautiful, and I'm going to forget to remind you, and I need to remember to do that. And I can't just be like, oh, you're so needy because you want me to tell you that you look nice? Like, no, I need to listen to that and be responsive, and I need to not be defensive and be like, I've communicated to you how beautiful I think you are so many times that like you should just believe me. Like, that's arrogance, and that's this unwillingness to compromise on little things that matter to people. And so for me, yeah, practically it's like I need to be able to articulate my brokenness in a way that's not self-defeating and causing me to think less of myself, but to just be aware so that I open up space for going to battle for each other, right? Like, I want to be with someone who says, Dave, oh my gosh, like, get over yourself. Like, shut up. Like, you're not that smart. You're not that special. And I love you, but most people don't. And you should appreciate that I love you, right? Like, I need that. I want that.
Yeah.
Even though I don't want it, right? Like,
right.
Like I want it, even though it will be hard for me. And that's a conversation I have with people all the time where I will say, this is my question. This is the question I ask people. Is there anything about your dream person that's going to bug you?
Oh.
And the response is always, well, of course not, because they're my dream person. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like my dream person, I hope she's smarter than me.
Yeah.
I hope she's wiser than me. I hope she's more disciplined than me, which means she's better than me at some things, which means I'm going to have to face where I'm not as good, where I'm lacking. And that means that there's going to be times where she's like, you're wrong. Stop it. You don't understand. And I'm going to have to be like, darn, you're right. This sucks. Right? Like, there's going to be a lot of things where I'm like, I don't want to do the dishes. And she's going to be like, if you want to be a responsible person who loves your wife well and takes care of your family, do the freaking dishes. Clean up. When you get home from work, play with your son. Play with your daughter. Like, you don't get to just complain and be like, I had a bad day, and so I'm going to come home and not be engaged as a parent. Like, I need my wife to hold me accountable, and there is no part of being held accountable that feels like a dream. Like, there's just not. And so I think that's such an interesting thing that people say, oh, I want this dream person. It's like, your dream person is going to piss you off at times because they better.
That's wise. Yeah.
Like, your family, your family's the people who make you the most mad, and yet the people you love the most. Why? Right. Because they have the space to critique you and to help you grow, and it's painful because growth is never pleasant. The iron sharpening iron is literally sticking a sword into burning hot coals, setting it on fire, and then smashing it with a hammer. Yeah. Like, that hurts, but it's good.
Right.
You're being designed into something effective. And I know that I've been talking a really long time at a really elevated, passionate level.
I love it, man.
But it is something that I do think about, which is, why would you expect that your dream person wouldn't piss you off at times?
Yeah. I got to be honest with you. Like, you're blowing my mind. I'm like, you're totally right. Like, and I think in the back of my mind, like, there's some of that of like, oh yeah, kind of like, I want somebody who challenges me and who, just like you said, like, is better than me. Like, and who's smarter than me, and maybe they make more money than me, and like whatever. It's like, that's kind of
it challenges some really deep things.
Challenging, and I joke with my friends all the time. I'm like, I'm just waiting on a sugar mama, but in reality, like, I think that symbolizes something to me of like, she's better than I am, and and I do believe that that's in a similar way of like something I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And something I'm desiring and something I'm wanting. And I think a lot of guys out there are in that same boat, who want a woman who challenges them to be better, because that's what marriage and the human relationship is about. If you're going to be in that level of intimacy with each other, you're there to make each other better, right? And to serve the other person and say, I'm here to make you better. And so I'm going to say some hard stuff.
Right.
I love you. I care about you. That is never in question, never in doubt. But if you're better, I'm better. And if I'm better, you're better.
Yes.
And so we have to commit to that together. And,
right. You have to check your ego at the door.
Right.
And say, I'm going to be wrong. And when I'm wrong, I'm going to admit it. And when you're wrong, you're going to admit it. And when we both think that we're right, I'm going to be wrong.
Right. That's service.
I'm going to be wrong. Not because there's some objective truth necessarily that we have to submit to, but because what's right for me is for you to feel loved and heard. And if that means me biting my tongue and getting over this stupid thing that I want to argue about, like, I'm going to do that. And it's easier said than done. And as an ignorant, single, 26-year-old dude who doesn't know anything about anything, who's just projecting all of his overinflated thoughts about the world, I still want to fight for that. Like, I want to build towards that. Like, I want my friends now to step into my life and hold me accountable. I want to be in conversations like this, where I know I'm gonna say something in these podcasts, and someone's gonna be like, "Oh my God, Dave, that was so ignorant and tone deaf and inconsistent and there's no empathy, and you're not even considering things." And I'm gonna have to be like, "You're so right. Like, I don't know anything. Like, I know what I kind of know, and I have thoughts about what I kind of know." But that's the point of this. And hopefully there's space to have one-on-one conversation with people who are like, "Hey, I thought you said that thing that was kind of a little bit," and I'm like, "Oh, let's help me understand." And obviously I want to still hold to my principles. So like, there's fundamental values that I hold, but like, I'm going to be wrong. Like, I'm going to spend my whole life being wrong. And there's some freedom in that. And to be like, I'll just get better, right? Like, it's information, and hopefully I take it and I use it for good, but I definitely want to be working on that now. And even though it's easy to talk a big game, the more I talk about it, the more specific I set myself up to be held accountable, right? Because hopefully maybe someday my wife will be like, hey, Dave, minute, hour, what do we like an hour 1:15? Remember when you said that you want a wife who does this? I'm doing it. And she just rubs it in my face. And I'm going to have to be like, you're right.
It's on video.
Like can't erase it. That I asked to be held accountable. And so the more I talk about it, the more the more you put something out there, the more that you have to live up to it. And so I'm doing that.
And I think that's great. And I think that's an amazing part about like doing stuff like this is in a sense, it's a maybe safer, maybe less safe way of saying to people like, hey, hold me accountable to this thing, where, hopefully more people are more gentle than just like, rubbing it in your face and being like, you suck, you're incongruent. Right. Because we all are at the end of the day. And I'm sure we'll look back at this in 5-10 years and be like, wow,
what was I thinking?
We were so naive.
Knew everything. And
and I think that's, again,
start my life.
Great thing about human experience is we're constantly moving forward.
Right.
Hopefully. And that's what I love about like these conversations is that we can have these, we can hash these out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we even came to a conclusion
I still know nothing.
Of
I'm single.
And exactly. And it's like we haven't came to a conclusion on anything, but I think just the value of just being able to process this out loud.
Yeah. For all huge. 7 people that might listen to this.
That's right. Hey, and to those 7 people, God bless you, and you're awesome.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about relationships we didn't plan to. But we also sent each other some questions that we want to talk about. So I do want to leave space for you to ask any questions that you might have had for me, because I do want this to be an equivalent back and forth conversation. Is there something that's not relationship related that you want to ask?
I think, I think the questions I had written down were kind of,
I like
beginner starter questions
or
whatever.
Questions.
Oh, well, thank you. I think they're pretty basic, but
I thought your first question was excellent.
You like my first question?
Yeah.
So what's one interesting thing about photography that you do that most people don't associate or don't even think about, like with your job, with your sphere of creativity,
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'm going to answer a different question. Like I'm going to answer I'm going to answer your question a little bit differently. One of the things I think people don't think about, and I think this is true for anyone who offers a service of any kind, anyone who kind of freelances or offers a product or sells a service kind of as a single business, small business, that's personal work. It's personal to people. And I get that there needs to be levels of like, don't let your work get personal and you have to have these boundaries. But like ultimately it's personal for people. Whether or not you're a photographer, a personal trainer, a hairstylist, you do makeup or nails or whatever, like that's your work. Like you've spent time putting in hours after hours of sharpening your craft. And the reason I bring that up is that one of the things that I think is really hard, and I wish people would think about, or at least remember, is that because it's personal, when you reach out to someone to inquire about their services, I'm pleading with you, please follow through. Like, if you find a personal trainer online and you reach out to them and say, hey, I know you're a trainer, I'm interested in your services, I would love to know more, and they get back to you with prices and times and details, and then you disappear, that leaves so much room for self-doubt, for insecurity, because when you reached out, they were really excited. Oh, that was really affirming that they wanted the thing that you do. And then when they meet you halfway and then you disappear and you kind of pull the rug out from them, that's super defeating. And not that you like have to, anyone you reach out to, that you have to like purchase their thing or follow through or work with them or anything like that. But please communicate and finish the conversation. Because it's very easy to be like, oh, I'm too expensive for you, or you don't have the money right now for those numbers, or your schedule doesn't work, or someone else is closer to you and that's why you need, like, it's super easy to have clarity about that stuff. And it's easy to kind of experience the rejection or whatever when you know why. When you don't know why. When someone reaches out to you, asks about something, communicates that they want something from you or to work with you, and then you disappear, it just creates this sense of, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And I get that it's work, right? So there's this level of like, I don't care. Like, it's not like the person who works at Nike is like seeing the person who's like walking by in Adidas and being like, why don't they buy my shoe? Right? Like, it's not that. It's different because it's their personal thing that they do. It's a small business type of thing. And I just wish people would remember that and be more considerate of that, because I have a lot of people who reach out to me about wanting to collaborate and wanting to work together or hire me. And they ask about prices, because people always want to know about prices,
First thing.
right? Like,
First
that's super
Absolutely.
obvious. And then I'm like, hey, here's what I want to do, or here's what it costs. Let me know your availability. And then just nothing.
Right.
And then I go through, well, what was it? And I know I shouldn't, and that's still on me to like not let myself go through the like tunnel of self, doubt and all the things. But it's inevitable, it's natural. And I just really wish people would just follow through. Like, if you're going to reach out, answer the questions, let them know, because there's a lot of people who have like the fish, like they got some bites and they got really excited and then they didn't follow through. But not only did it not follow through, they don't know why. And that's so much harder to deal with. And so when it comes to people who do creative things or professional things as a solo entrepreneur or freelancer, please, if you reach out, follow through.
Yeah.
Respond, get back with your schedule, or say that you're not interested. Because there are a lot of people who I know who are deeply, deeply afraid or confused as to why they're not having the success they're having, because people are not communicating with them. Anyway, that's something that people don't know or think about, and I wish they would.
Absolutely. And coming from also providing a service, as an online coach and kind of another part of my job and kind of another area is I teach people how to be online coaches and build their businesses. And that is such, like, you're hitting the nail on the head of, it is personal. I don't know if like I'd ever thought about it in those terms before of like, man, why does this feel like so much like rejection, kind of going back to dating.
Yeah.
And it's the same way of like, don't ghost people, like explain to them, like, and it doesn't have to be some long, like drawn out thing. It's just like, hey, I'm not interested. Right. Like, for XYZ reason, I can't fit you in my budget, timing doesn't work, whatever it is, and that's fine. But to just straight up ghost people and just leave people unread, and like, they call you because like I'm a follow-upper, like I'm gonna follow up with you because I want to make sure that if this is something you really want, that I'm removing all those barriers for you, and if I can follow up once or twice or 5 times, then I'm gonna do it. But you're right. It's like there does get a point where I'm like, okay, I know they're ignoring me. I know they're not answering my texts or my calls or something or whatever that is. And that's confusing, and it's hurtful, and it creates self-doubt in a lot of different ways. And it is personal, where most jobs, if you were to go work for another business, again,
it's not your business.
It's not your business. You're just an employee.
Right.
And so when you get whether you work for, a retailer, or whether you work for a manufacturing company, whether you work, even if you work in sales for someone else, it's not as personal.
Yeah.
Because it's not your service. And the ability, I think, to communicate from both sides, and I think that not to pat myself on the back, but like, I think I've become more wise in that, being in the service industry and doing that stuff, because like, even I was talking to a really good friend of mine. He does personal training, and he does a special type of training that uses it's called a Nuvi system. I can't explain it, it's super scientific, whatever. I really loved it. I haven't seen him in a while. I texted him the other day and I was like, hey, I need to get another session with you. Like, what's your availability? What do you look like? All that stuff. We went back and forth. He followed up with me, like, because we had kind of a lapse. He was like, hey, I'm not working this weekend. Like, reach out to me later. I forgot, right? He reached back out to me, and like we kind of got through some text messages back and forth. And it was like, hey, I'm in this area, which is of Houston, which is 45 minutes away from where I am, and I need to do it during the day. Time didn't work out. Like, I can't take 3 hours in the day to drive 45 minutes to get the workout with him for an hour and then drive 45 minutes back and be in a good work mode. And so I was like, hey man, it's just not going to work out. Right. It's like, hey, timing doesn't work. Like, Olivia, we'll figure something out. Right. You know?
But you never, throughout that whole process, you never felt like he was, or you were being dismissive.
Oh, no.
Right. Because there was regular communication.
I hope, and I felt like I communicated like, hey, just doesn't work. Right. Love you. Definitely want to, if we can figure it out a different day or time, let's do it. Right. But where we are right now for the time we were discussing, it's just not going to work. And so I hear you. Like, it's crazy how personal like the services industry can be. And I think that's a commentary on our ability and where we are as a society to not follow up and to just be dismissive and just kind of move past and say, oh, well, I guess they'll figure it out, and assume feelings, assume thoughts, assume whatever, when that stuff's not there. One of the things that, I've learned over the years and that I try to live by and try to remind people of, myself included, is communication prevents frustration. Communication prevents frustration. And most frustration can be avoided by communicating. Yep. And communicating clearly. And again, if it's a no, that's fine. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. Just let me know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's almost weird where conscious rejection is actually better than lack of communication. Because at least you know where you stand.
Yeah, it's clarity.
Someone saying no to you is better than them not saying either yes or no. Because it's a no to them anyway, right? Because if it's not a yes, it's a no. In some kind of fundamental sense. But yeah, that's hard. I have learned that the fastest way to end a conversation with someone is to ask this question, which is, let me know your availability.
Yes.
That is too open-ended for most people.
Right.
You have to say, Monday, 6 p.m., this location. Yep. Yes or no? Okay. Tuesday, 8 p.m., this location. I just have found very few people who, when you say, let me know your availability, that they actually do it in a timely manner. And I don't know how to, there's no solution for me. Like, at some point, I'm not going to chase you down. Like, at some point, you either want to do this and you make time, or you don't want to do this and we're not going to do it. But the last thing I'm going to do is do something that I feel like I'm pushing on you.
Right.
And that's hard because a lot of times I don't have a close enough personal relationship with someone to be like, hey, I'm kind of feeling like not prioritized at all. Because you don't have the relationship equity to have that conversation because it feels confrontational. And yet, if someone 2 weeks ago said, I want to book with you, and then every 6 days respond with like one answer to one question, what am I going to do? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I want to work with you. I want to be available to you, but I don't want to be the like, oh my gosh, respond. I don't want to feel petty and clingy as the person who you reached out to. Like, I didn't reach out to you and say, do you want to do this? You reached out to me. And I've just learned that, like, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. So obviously I care a lot more about it. And I'm in a service that I run into that a lot.
Oh, for sure.
But it's just like, let asking someone to let you know their availability is for them to stop talking, because what will happen is they won't, and then they'll want to text you about something, but they'll realize they haven't answered your question. And so they can't just say something else, because then they'll be rude by ignoring what you asked. And so they don't say anything because they are not ready to figure out their availability. And so they won't answer. They can't answer your question yet. Yeah. But then they won't let themselves text you back until they figured it out. And then they've put themselves in an impossible situation. And I'm like, well,
just say no.
Just be like, I will let you know at this point. What's up?
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Why is that?
Yeah.
So crazy. Like, why is it so crazy to be like, hey, this thing, I'll let you know later. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, for sure. And like, to kind of re-emphasize what you just said, like, whenever I am messaging people about getting on the phone with them to talk about fitness coaching, I never ask when they're available. I said, I am available this time tomorrow, 2 p.m. Central Time. Does that work for you? And most of the time, I'll say all the time, that gets a better response than, hey, when are you free to chat? Right? It just doesn't work. I think maybe it's just that's too big of a question to ask for. That's too big of a commitment. I don't know what that is psychologically for people, but just from a sales perspective, like, I do this all day, every day. It's just like, this time, does that work for you? And most of the time they'll say, no, I work until 4 p.m. And I'll say, okay, how does 4:30 p.m.? I'll look at my calendar. What's my next available time? Oh, it's at 5. Okay, how about 5 p.m.? Because I know I'm available. Now it sounds like you're available. So now, like, how about this time?
Yeah.
And I think that, there's a minimum there's a minimum level of responsibility, I feel like, that should be implemented when talking to people about when people create and put in effort to make something happen for you
that you started.
Right. Sure.
You reached out to them first. So when you respond, it's not like you just cold called someone like, hey, can I talk to you about this thing? And they're like, who are you? And no, like, they reached out to you about something that you offer. Right. And now you are trying to fit them into your schedule. So the responsibility, in my opinion, and maybe I'm crazy, is that they should meet you halfway and do their due diligence. If they ask something from you, they need to be able to provide something for you.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think the barrier is? What do you think is holding people back from doing that exact thing that you said? Like, what is that thing? I'm curious.
I think people talk about what they want before they thought about it. Like, I think people are like, oh, you're a photographer? You do stuff? Cool. You want to work together? And then I'm like, yeah. Can you pay for it? And when are you free? And they're like, oh, shoot, I haven't even gotten there yet. And I'm going on vacation next week. And I have this thing and I'm not sure yet. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to wear. Maybe I'm not in the right physical shape that I want to be in yet for these photos. And then they do the whole processing thing.
Yes.
And I get it. I don't think people are like intentionally being like, screw you, bro. Like, LOL. Like, you're just gotcha. Like waiting around for me.
Just told you. And
I'm like, just kind of like keeping you on the hook. I think it's genuinely like they're just treating it like, oh, I just asked because why not? Get some information. Not understanding that in order to make this happen, I have to get the logistics figured out.
To them, it's casual. To you, it's personal.
Right.
Just like we were talking about.
Yes.
To them, it's casual. I'm just going to throw this out there and see what happens. And to you, this is my business. This is personal to me. I'm going to make it happen if this is something that they want to do. And in a very similar way, because I totally agree. I totally resonated with what you said. So I told you, like, I talk to fitness influencers all the time and help them build their online coaching businesses. And I kid you not, I can't tell you how many people I have talked to on the phone who've told me, I want this. This is a quote. I want this more than anything in the world.
That's a lot.
And then it comes to getting them on a phone call or setting up the next call and kind of laying everything out. And I can't get a hold of them. And, or I tell them the price, right? And I tell them, and I kind of lay it out there for them and let them know like, hey, this is what it's going to take and this is what it's going to be. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's, that's a little expensive. Or that's, I don't know if I have time for that. Right. It's always money and time. Like, it's always the biggest things. And I get it. People are busy. People got to be conscious of their money or whatever. But at the end of the day, just like you were saying, I think people say and react emotionally to things and say, yeah, like, of course I want to be a fitness influencer and make this a living and be able to quit my other job and do all these things. Like, absolutely, I want that. And then it's like, and then the question comes, okay, what are you really willing to do to make that happen?
What are you willing to sacrifice?
What are you willing to sacrifice? And it's like, oh, actually, I think I'm good. I'm kind of comfortable. But now they know that they've said that.
Right.
They remember saying, yes, what I want. And so I think that fear rises up in them to say, to not say anything and to ghost and to walk away from the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm, once again, like, I just wish people would be thinking about this. Like, it's more of just an FYI. Like, I'm not trying to say, oh, all of those of you who have reached out to me here or anyone else, you're being inconsiderate and rude and disrespectful. Like, no, I don't think that. I just want people to be thinking about and maybe have this awareness of the people who have spent time building a craft of freelancing in some capacity. They offer services. They've invested in getting good at something so that someone can pay them to do it. It's personal to them. It's their thing. Yeah. And when you show interest and then you don't follow through on communication, it's defeating. And maybe it shouldn't be. And maybe we should all do better at removing our emotions from our work, because we shouldn't take things personally, because rarely is it ever personal.
Right.
But I know for me, I'll look at other photographers and I'll just be like, why do they keep getting all the super successful influencers and all the most beautiful people to be in their portfolio? And why is everyone paying them to do their photos? What about them is better than me? What is the skill that they have? What's the quality of photo that they have that I don't have? What is the quality of person that they are that people are drawn to them and say yes to them and don't say yes to me or don't reach out to me? Like, I shouldn't do those things. And that's something that I have to work on personally, but it's real. Like, my emotions are connected to my craft. I want to be excellent and I want people to feel like I'm excellent. And in some ways there's an unhealthy version of that I need to work on. And then in other ways it's like, I've spent so much time trying to perfect the thing that I do. And it's hard when people initiate and then disappear.
Right.
Because I can't chase them down. It wouldn't be fair for me to be like, hey, you owe me. Like, no, like,
right.
you don't have to work with me. You don't owe me any of that. But it doesn't stop me from feeling like, I wonder what I could have done differently. I wonder what's not good enough about me. And so I want to say that as a reminder of like, hey, just be thinking about that. Like, if you fill out an application with a fitness trainer, follow through.
Yeah.
And let them know if you're not going to go with them, or let them know that you'll let them know later. But just don't keep them in the dark. If you reach out to a person who's works at a hair salon and you want them to cut your hair, but you are busy when they gave you times, like, don't just not respond. Let them know, hey, I had to find someone else because of my schedule, but I will let you know if I, need you again, and vice versa. But otherwise, it just breeds self-doubt and it's really defeating. And so, all right, man. First of all, I love you so much, bro. You are just super special, and I really appreciate your radical candor when it comes to what you think and what you believe. And I love being able to, vent. We spend a lot of time venting in this. about relationships and about all that stuff.
I think a better word maybe than venting is just processing.
Yeah,
and I think there are a lot of people out there who are thinking the same thing. They just don't have a platform that they can. And maybe
come on to the podcast. I'll talk to them. But yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Of course.
Thanks for being you. I know that we're going to continue to do cool things in the world. But I want to encourage you that your emotional maturity and your wisdom and your intentionality and your conviction is really rare. And I really admire that in you. And I think that you're going to find the one someday. No, you might not. I won't give you that platitude. But dude, you're a game changer, and you have a heart for other people in a way that is really encouraging. And I'm encouraged by you. And I will continue to be. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I really do. It means a lot. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for being you, Dave. You are amazing, and like I know, like I live in Houston, you live in Austin. Outside of my family, you're the only person I see in Austin. I just want you to know that, because that's how much our relationship means to each other. And so, I love you, and I wish you all the best and everything.
All right, well, we'll do another episode, I'm sure, at some point. But thanks so much for being here.